What's good, guys? It's Links here. Today, we're going to be reacting to Anthony Fantano's not reaction, review of We're All Alone This Together. Um, it has been around 10 or so days since the album dropped. I think everyone has had kind of a decent amount of time to sit with the tracks, digest them. I have personally. Um, I still would probably say it's the best album I've listened to this year, and probably the best album I've listened to in a decent while. Um, I would say I like it more than Psychodrama for sure. Um, I mean, even though I would say it's close, but I definitely prefer We're All Alone This Together. Um, I do like though how in Psychodrama there was kind of a really like uh, drawn out kind of theme with the whole like therapy session thing. Um, we're in this album though there was kind of a theme and I didn't really touch on it in the review because I kind of was torn between trying to uh, dissect certain tracks, but then also kind of you know having a regard for the time, with it being an hour, uh, the album itself just being an hour long. Um, but uh, I definitely would say that there is a theme, and that being the whole kind of movie theme that Dave had. In the first track, "We're All Alone," you have that like little movie intro thing with the countdown, I think it was, and he kind of touches on it in other places too, uh, like the last track where he talks about some like making a soundtrack or whatever, or something like that, for his mom. I don't remember exactly though what the lyrics were, but um, he does touch on it multiple times. It's not really as kind of um, like um, accentuated, I guess you could say, as the theme in Psychodrama. I think Psychodrama was a lot more apparent. Um, but yeah, that's enough of a preface. Let's just get into this.
Hi everyone, yes, the Pink Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a
Cover is pretty
review
pink as
of
well.
this new Dave album, We're All Alone in This Together. This is the sophomore full-length LP of UK rapper and songwriter Santan Dave, or simply Dave. A few years ago, he reached a moderate level of international acclaim with the release of his commercial debut, Psychodrama, where he was definitely putting in a lot of effort on the lyrical front, but as far as the beats went, the underwhelming flows, I found that less than compelling. But I
If you are trying to be objective, you could definitely like argue that you just like the beats and his flows at some points on the album weren't, I guess, up to par, but yeah, but lyrically, yes, like he definitely did well, um, on Psychodrama, very well actually, and but I think like if you're a Dave fan, or most listeners from UK listeners or whatever, just people who are into the genre, um, I really don't think like maybe like the beats at times will could turn people off, even though I don't think they were horrible. There are definitely some where like it was kind of a little off. Um, but with regards to like the flows, I think sometimes the flows that someone like Anthony Fantano wouldn't like from Dave are also the same ones that Dave fans would love the most. Like something like if he's like being very nonchalant, kind of with his flow, kind of like on Clash. You know, Objectively, it is a like it's a kind of lazy flow, but Dave fans like probably appreciate a lot, but just because it's kind of a more of a vibe and a kind of a cadence that's interesting more than it is objectively a bad flow, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I'll just continue.
get the appeal though. If Dave's storytelling is hitting for you, you most likely find his music to be life changing and really profound. And
That is definitely true. That's the most of Dave's appeal to me, is just his storytelling and the topics he talks about combined with his lyricism. Because no real rappers touch a lot of the topics that he talks about, like at all, and definitely not to the extent that he does, if they do. Um, but yeah, I definitely do agree like that. If you do like, you know, if you are invested, in hearing someone talk about those topics, then his music like could be, like very very profound for you and like as he says, life changing. And I think that's kind of the reason why Dave has such like a real kind of cult fan base that are like very very connected and things like that to him. Um, because while every kind of rapper could claim to have that kind of fan base, um, I think it's definitely a little bit more accentuated with Dave just because of, he can definitely build more of a connection with his fans based on how, like, the sentimental kind of topics he raps about and the real life kind of topics that he raps about that a lot of people don't touch. So,
And on his new LP here, Dave seems more than aware of that phenomenon to the point where he's embracing it, building narratives around it, and formulating a project here that reads almost as cinematic. Case in point, the opening track where Dave drops some hard philosophy over refined keys, strings, and some film sound effects. Dropping bars like, "What's the point of being rich when your family ain't? It's like riding first class on a crashing plane. My life's full of plot holes and I've been filling them." Later, he goes into these messages that a fan sent him contemplating suicide, later following up after Dave's response saying that he saved his life. A moment on the track that does sit a little weird with me personally. I feel like it's one thing to broadcast this experience if it's something that you feel like you can lend insight to or impacted you personally in some way. But then it's another to feed into these jewels of grandeur alongside it, talking about God casting you in a significant role of some sort. I have
actually, let me just
no
finish
doubt that Dave's efforts on this record are well intentioned for sure, but that still doesn't change the fact that there are moments on this record where he seems to be contradicting himself a little bit, which
Yeah, so with regards to that criticism, um, you know, that is an interesting point though about that it is a little bit kind of weird or counterintuitive that he has on one hand, him talking about the experience he had with the fan alongside him saying like, you know, um, sort of boastful or I guess like he says like uh kind of comments like grandeur, how he's cast as some leader by God. Um, I would definitely say though, Dave. Oh, the voice cracks are in today. Dave, he's I think at an intellectual point where he's like, he's not gonna be stupid enough to you know say something like, oh, I'm some divine or person or I'm some like messenger prophet kind of thing. I don't really think he means it that way. I think he's because he uses the term cast. God cast me as a leader. I think he's in some ways kind of trying to uh, keep that movie theme going, but also I think he's more so kind of talking about that from the front of being like kind of blessed and um, getting to where he is and wanting to help other people and getting the opportunity to help other people, um, rather than him kind of saying like, oh, I am something more than everyone else. Um, but going off what he's Anthony Fantano just says right after about you know the contradictory aspect of his music is definitely there. It is at times on this album and it has been before. Um, it is definitely like accentuated by the fact that his music is so kind of focused on lyrics and storytelling that if something like that would happen with another artist, you wouldn't really notice as much because you probably don't pay attention to the lyrics as much. But yeah, he Dave does acknowledge though that he kind of can be contradictory in his music. Like I referenced in the album reaction he did have on Hangman where he said, "Oh, I'm a hypocrite." Um, but yeah, the one kind of contradiction that you may be alluding to is with that is just how he's kind of talking on the one hand about um, being kind of at one with kind of on the same level as his fans. Like you're like he's numerous times kind of said out he's almost like a friend to his fans rather than someone above them, and he kind of continues that on his album. But then he also says God cast me as a leader. So there's definitely contradictions, but um, I don't really think he's uh, really mentally kind of in that delusion of grandeur that uh, Fantano's talking about. But yeah,
which again I think boils down to some of the themes on this LP being shoddily strung together, and that is further illustrated by the following tracks really failing to hit upon anything of substance. For example, on Verdansk, Dave drops some cold bars here and there, but ultimately the track fails to rise above general braggadocio much of the time. Plus, there are some tacky references to YG having a falling out with Kalani, and then that possessive bar about his girl needing to be far from social, don't want to see her at Carney. There's the even less impressive Clash, shockingly less impressive because it has Stormzy on the track, where Dave and Stormzy just go on endlessly about their watches, various brands. It's a lot of materialism over a supremely boring and drab drill beat. And matched up with Stormzy on a track, Dave just continues to sound unenthusiastic, which was an issue that I had on Psychodrama, though In the Fire is a decent change of pace.
all right. Before he talks about In the Fire, um, that was what I alluded to earlier about him at times sounding like kind of lazy. And that is an issue that, as Fantano said, that he had on Psychodrama as well. Again, like I said before, I think it's kind of that's where I think Fantano kind of has a disconnect between him and a lot of the like most people that listen to Dave's music, or a lot of the people that he reviews, in that he's gonna look at it like just from the standpoint of, oh, every track needs to, live up to a certain standard, and if it doesn't, then it's just, a low point on the album or whatever. But for Dave, like I'm for Dave fans, I think that Clash and Verdansk would arguably be like their top 2 or 3 songs on the album. Like, I mean, or in their top 5 songs on the album. I watched like Dens and Rens, if you know the UK Reactor, the UK Reactors. They did like a top 5, and Verdansk was their number 1, and I think Clash, I don't know if it was in the top 5 or not, but they enjoyed that song as well. So I mean, there's definitely a disconnect there between what he judges things by, whereas what most other people do. But then again, he is like a music critic, and I think most people are never gonna really have that level of, kind of care, I guess, for what they listen to, or look into it that much. But I definitely do think it's harsh though, because sure, I think you should have themes and things like that if you want to create kind of a good album, and uh you know you know an album that is looked on very highly, which is definitely what Dave was going for, and he definitely did try to have that movie theme. But at the same time, you need variety, and like if you are a kind of a conscious rapper, like I don't think it's that horrible of a thing to have 1 or 2 songs where it is braggadocio, where it is rapping about materialistic things. The whole watches thing is definitely a fair criticism, because they did talk about that for, I think, basically half of the track at least. But yeah, I think you definitely I think having a couple of those kind of tracks is definitely warranted on an album, even if you're a conscious rapper who's going for an album with a theme of some sort. I think it's kind of harsh in that way to sort of be like, oh, all your tracks have to be conscious. They have to be, on the level of something like Heart Attack, or I guess In the Fire, that kind of thing. But yeah, let's just keep going.
Which was an issue that I had on Psychodrama, though In the Fire is a decent change of pace where Dave assembles a posse cut of sorts with features from Giggs, Getz, Fredo, Meeks Manny, and I love the gospel chorus samples laced into the beat, but lyrically and emotionally, everybody on this track just seems to be like in their own world entirely. The opening verse seems almost like Drake inspired, which I think is fitting vocally and tonally, because that almost seems like the direction the beat is going in. Meanwhile, Getz is like writing and delivering on this song like he's fighting for his fucking life. The Russian-German drive-by line right at the start of his verse is incredible, and the way he followed it up with that Saved by the Bell, hear the screech bar, was some of the best writing on this entire project. And
yeah, that Gets verse was it was yeah. I didn't touch on this in the review, but um the beat, like, if you noticed when listening to the song, the beat completely switched and kind of, mellowed down. Oh my, the voice cracks are going brazy. The beat mellowed down a little bit during Get's verse, kind of, I guess, acknowledging, that this verse is insane. So yeah, um I'm glad that Fantano acknowledged that. Definitely, he that writing, like, in that verse, like, I don't know, like, what got into Gets for him to do that. Like, that's one of the best features I think I've heard in a very long time in terms of lyricism, and just, effort, honestly, and delivery and everything. Um, I think he did have that criticism, though, of, like, uh, things, kind of every kind of artist being in their own world, kind of thing, and you that is definitely kind of true to some extent. Every kind of artist had their own, kind of way of handling it, but at the same time, though, every single person on the track, like, kind of structure their verse at least in some way around the theme of the song, which is, being, from, the fire, in the fire, that kind of thing. Gets his entire verse was literally, like, almost every single lyric, or every almost most lines had something to do with fire, being, raised in the fire, that kind of thing. And everyone else on the track touched on it in a kind of somewhat of a decent way, amount. So I don't really think that's the fairest criticism. Like, sure, people kind of handled it differently, but they had a theme. They stuck to it very well, in my opinion. So I don't know what else really you can ask for. Um, but yeah, let's keep going.
And it's just nonstop from there. And the finish my verse never heard a hook line right at the end is. But then gigs coming in after that is like way under delivered in comparison with everybody else. And that Bunyan line really needs to go. My God. Dave ties things up kind of nicely on the back end, but ultimately the track is not like the front to back fireworks I was hoping for. From here, we hit the.
All right, yeah, just about that. For gigs, though, I mean, honestly, I think it was one of the a, a better gigs verses I've heard. Um, like, I mean, he had bars in there. He had, the flow wise, like, it was very good, in my opinion. Um, I mean, sure, like, he didn't, rise to not even close to the level of lyricism that Getz did, or and sure, he had, a couple of those lines that, uh, if you're a super harsh critic, you're gonna get mad at, but you have to acknowledge to some extent why you listen to these artists. Dave, you listen to, and I don't mean to box them in any way, but you're primarily listening to Dave for his lyricism, his flows as well, and, storytelling and things like that. Get Gigs, you're not really listening to too much for lyricism. He does have a lot of punchlines in his music, a lot of show related punchlines in his music. He had the Simpsons bar. He's a reference, superheroes and, like, Batman, things like that in bars before. You come to him with a punchlines like that, but you come to him for, like, crazy lyricism, life related kind of storytelling that someone like Getz or Dave would give you. So I mean, you have to acknowledge that to some extent. I don't think you should be mad if, Gigs gives you that kind of line that, that you look at as bad, or uh, he doesn't perform on the same level as Getz or Dave. So I don't know. I think it's a bit harsh, and but yeah, I mean, I could see what he's saying, though. So yeah.
The midpoint of the record, which in my opinion is a tad bit mixed, though we do get the stunning Three Rivers, where Dave goes at length lyrically about the rock and a hard place that immigrants in England find themselves in. They were broken by the country that
Underrated
they came
track.
to fix is just one of numerous devastating bars on this track, as Dave, in a very careful and amazing way, just goes over a lot of historical context on this track, not in a way that feels preachy or overly bookish or anything like that. He's really flexing his storytelling muscle on this one to deliver in a way where I think your average person who isn't usually, like, a history or a political or a sociology buff will hear it and get it. The track system works in
Very true. That is definitely true. And uh, you know, yeah. I mean, I don't even know where I was gonna go with that, but he storytelling wise on that track, he definitely, as he said, he flexes muscle, and he he went at length, on those topics about immigrants coming to England and what they had to face, and I definitely do agree, that he did it in such a way where if you weren't already someone who would be interested in those kind of topics otherwise, that you wouldn't be turned off by it. You would kind of listen to that and actually get it as he says, and yeah, let's just keep going.
some lush and vibrant Afro beats with WizKid on the hook. It's kind of flirty, kind of fun, or at least it's trying to be. Even though I get the point of the song, I think Dave really fails to bring the type of vocal delivery you would need to really light a song like this up. We have a similar Afro beats itch getting scratched on the following Lazarus, which does go in a moodier direction but somehow ends up sounding even less memorable. Then Law of Attraction is even more lifeless than that, and Dave's Love on the Rocks bars on this track are some of the corniest on the entire LP. Like the bulletproof vest for the shots that you're sending, I cannot. Thankfully, Dave seems to pull out all the stops a little bit for the last leg of this LP. We have both sides of a smile where not only does James Blake lay down some gorgeous guest vocals, but we've also got cinematic strings. Lyrically, some of the movie themes come back, which is nice. And not only do we get an actually compelling relationship narrative out of this track, but a creative concept as well, where for 1 second Dave is rapping from the standpoint of his significant other, and then slowly his vocals fade into hers, and the rest of that verse is rapped by Shah Simone, who does a great job and really makes the track. That and the chord change that ushers in a very strong part 2, which features some of the best writing on this entire LP. It's incredible how much detail Dave goes into in regards to just how even a bit of deception can completely unravel this amazing and fantastic relationship. There is a lot of genuine fear and regret and remorse expressed on this song that's really intense. Maybe it's my favorite song Dave's ever done. We also get the massive heart attack, which Dave is no stranger to writing a long...
Actually, let's just pause right before it gets into that. I definitely do agree that some of the, at least for me, the midpoint of the album, those middle songs, Lazarus, as well as System, and Law of Attraction. Those were definitely the weakest point for me. They weren't, in my opinion, really bad. I think a lot of people really liked Lazarus. I thought Lazarus was pretty good as well. And I don't think any of them were really horrible. But it was definitely like those songs I re-listened to, the least. But Both Sides of the Smile, it's a great song, and I wouldn't be surprised by the fact that Fantano would be saying that would be, what perhaps his favorite song that, Dave has ever done. Because he definitely would, if you watch a lot of his, reviews and things like that, a song like that would definitely appeal to him rather than, a song probably like Clash or something like that. Or, most just straight kind of rap, typical tracks. But yeah, I mean, Both Sides of the Smile was like, really, really well done. And James Blake, smashed it out the park. But yeah, he definitely acknowledged as well the movie themes that came back during that song, and Shah Simone as well, who did very well. I'm feeling I'm basically just repeating what he said, but that was definitely a strong point. I don't really think I acknowledged it that much on the review. I mean, I did acknowledge it was a great song, but I think a lot of people really love that song, and for good reason, honestly. Yeah, it was great writing from Dave as well. So
has ever done. We also get the massive heart attack, which Dave is no stranger
massive.
to writing a long song. And at almost 10 minutes, this is a big one. Lyrically, Dave on this track is going deep into cycles of pain and his own realizations in his life where he's felt trapped in them, both as a victim and as somebody who has participated, like in a toxic relationship, for example. Plus, I love the way the beat on this track resembles a heartbeat, which is slowly dying down and at one point disappears and leaves Dave rapping passionately a cappella.
That is a very good point, actually, a very good observation that I didn't really notice. But yeah, looking back on the track, it started out like with the guitars, like the acoustic one, there's an electric one. There it was a kind of a layered guitar, just strumming, and then it just eventually, as the track goes on, obviously, and then it leads into where he goes a cappella, which is kind of a metaphor in itself, I guess you could say, for kind of the cycles of pain, as he says, and their effects on people and their drastic kind of progression, getting worse, and like he says, like a heartbeat. And I don't know if he's aware also of the fact that obviously like it's kind of a sequel to Panic Attack, where he at the end does go a cappella as well. But yeah, he went absolutely he went absolutely crazy on that. And mostly, like you said, just referencing many different, kind of just having many different angles on, certain types of pain he's felt, whether it be, as he says, victim, or, someone who's, been the cause of it, or, whatnot. So, yeah.
Heavy track, and I have to emphasize that. I mean, even though I'm not crazy about a lot of the material I've heard so far on this LP, this one is incredible and truly showcases Dave's talents as a writer, a storyteller, and a rapper. Survivor's Guilt is a relatively strong ending as well, where Dave goes into a lot of the gossip and speculation online, feeling awful about being happy about the position that he's in because he remembers all of those who he grew up with or who he knew in his personal life, who have not been afforded the same privileges and luxuries as him on account of his success. Overall, the track reads like a very emotional monologue type moment to finish the record off, but like the intro, we have a lot of various feelings and ideas and allusions to things being thrown out really quickly, not being explored all that thoroughly, which leaves the record feeling really inconclusive. And honestly, I'm not even expecting him to close the album off with like all the answers, because who the hell has any of those? But I suppose more self-awareness in that department would have been nice, and more focus thematically across the record would have been nice as well. Because yeah, ultimately I think this LP's greatest issue is that it's a little all over the place stylistically and emotionally, and also I guess just message-wise as well. For sure, Dave's writing and performances on this record overall are a lot better than they were on Psychodrama. And there are some standout tracks on this LP because of that, but it's whether or not he has, I guess, assembled all of these ideas, organized them in a compelling way for the entirety of an album that is the question, and I don't think that's the case. Feeling a strong 5 to a light 6 on this one. Transition.
Oh, man, we don't need to go to that. That score was tough. That was not good. Honestly, after all of that, honestly, I genuinely thought he'd give it like at least like a 7 or something. I mean, like, or at least a strong 6 to a light 7. But yeah, 5 though, because I think I watched the All Over the Place review, which is right here. I think if I'm not wrong, he gave it a 5. So I mean, yeah, I don't think those albums are even in the same stratosphere. Yeah, and I'm a like a KSI stan, and I thought the album was very good, but with regards to what he said about Heart Attack at the end, it was very, very, as he says, a heavy track, And um, I do definitely appreciate the fact that he acknowledged, just the, you know, like the sheer effort that they've put into it, and um, you know how kind of profound it was, and how it explored, those kind of themes of pain and things like that. Um, but in Survivor's Guild as well, very good track. I didn't really say that much about it, I don't think, on the album review. But that one I have replayed a lot. The sample on it is very good. Um, you know, Sample wise, Dave has a very good ear for samples. But yeah, that track itself was good. I love the topics they explored on that as well. Obviously, it wasn't really as hard hitting as something like Heart Attack, but it definitely like has a lot of kind of profoundness to it. As I said that word about 500 times, but yeah, that was a very good track, and I think it was a good track to end the album off on. Um, I think, yeah, it had, uh, and I think like the Daniel Kaluuya little sound bit at the end was also a good one to end the album on as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, with regards to the album as a whole, um, and what he said up at the end, because his main criticism, it seems, kind of was just the fact that, uh, like you said before, the themes were shoddily strung together and there wasn't really kind of cohesive. He couldn't do it over the course of the album, is what he's saying. Um, but I I definitely think that's a fair criticism. He definitely kind of thematically left things a little bit disorienting. Um, but also, I think that's also kind of a bit harsh. Um, he, the movie theme, yeah, that was definitely not really um, explored to the extent that you would want to see if from like a Dave album, I guess. Given the expectations I think people have on him, like kind of storytelling and kind of intellectually, I guess, when it comes to rapping. But uh, I still think though, like for the average, Dave fan, something like that is really not gonna matter. Obviously, if you're gonna look at it critically, which is what he's doing here, he's not really looking at it from the view of an average fan. But uh, I still think it's a bit harsh. Um, and the score at the end definitely was a bit harsh. Um, I just, yeah, but my final kind of, I guess, reaction comments to this, about this, would just be that you know sure, emotionally or message wise, like he says, um it is, you know not the most cohesive body of work. And I do definitely agree though that, overall the writing and performances and everything like that are better on the most part from Psychodrama, so it's an improvement in that way. But I think thematically, or if you want to look at it kind of just in the bigger kind of picture of things, or emotionally, as he says, it is all over the place. But at the same time, what do you expect really from an album? Uh, like sure, there are like whole, yeah, and the voice crack is back. There are, some albums where it can adhere to a theme really really well. Something like Good Kid, Mad City comes to mind. But even at the same time, an album like that, it had, um, it did explore different things. Like, you go from a track like The Art of Peer Pressure to Money Trees, or, um, you know, yeah, just, I can't really think of actually another one right now. Or Good Kid, something like that. Or Mad City also as well. Those tracks went in so many different ways. Sure, you could, there is an overarching theme, but you're gonna have tracks on them where they explore different emotions, or and I don't think that's really his criticism. I think it's just the fact that it was so kind of all over the place that um, any type of theme was really kind of hard to gauge, and that is fair at the end of the day if you really want to be kind of critical of it. But at the end of the day, most people, it's not gonna phase most people, is what I mean. But yeah, I did draw this out a ton, as I'm known for. But that was my reaction to Anthony Fantano's album review on We're All Alone in This Together. Leave suggestions for reactions in the comments below. Appreciate the support on the album reaction. I'm going to try to keep this up. And yeah, I'm going to see y'all later. Peace.